All right. This should be common sense among those who know basketball, which is that there are only three players in the history of the NBA that can be considered the greatest basketball player or players of all time. And these three players are the ones that you see in the screen right here: Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul Jabbar, and Michael Jordan. Those are the only three players that can be included in the GOAT argument. No other player. Not Wilt Chamberlain, not Magic Johnson, not Larry Bird, and definitely not LeBron James. Definitely not Steph Curry. All right. Not Shaquille O'Neal. Rest in peace, but not Kobe Bryant. No, 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 no. Even though the guys that I just named are some of the greatest players in the history of the NBA, each of these players that I just named can be considered the top 10 or 15 greatest players of all time. But to be, and and I'll include some more players who are not in the GOAT argument. Not Oscar Robertson, not not Jerry West, not Isaiah Thomas. And once again, with all due respect to these players, only three players can be considered the greatest players to ever play in NBA history. And that's Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Michael Jordan. These three players in their prime were the only players in the history of the league who never had another player dominate over them. As great as Wilt Chamberlain was, when he played against Bill Russell and the Boston Celtics, in whether it be in the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals, he'd lose most of the time. Bill Russell and the Boston Celtics dominated over him, as great as he is. But which player can you say, or which opposing team can you say had a dominant hand on Bill Russell and the Boston Celtics when Bill Russell was at his prime? Which player or which team can you say had a dominant hand over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he was in his prime? Which player or which team can you say had a dominant hand over Michael Jordan when he was in his prime? And please don't say that it was the Detroit Pistons. Because even though the Detroit Pistons dominated young Jordan, but when Michael Jordan, alongside Scottie Pippen, entered their prime, the Detroit Pistons became yesterday's news. And Michael Jordan became the only star player outside of Bill Russell to lead a team into 3 consecutive championships twice. In other words, he three-peated twice. When Michael Jordan was in his prime during the 1990s, no other team or player was able to dominate or had a dominant hand over him. And the record that these three people set, I mean, plenty of other players have set records, right? But I won't say the records, but the influence or the impact that these three players had over the game can't be compared. Like no other players can top that. Once again, you had many other players outside of these three that you're looking at right now who had a great impact in the game of basketball. Of course, Wilt Chamberlain had a very good impact in the game of basketball. Shaquille O'Neal had a very good impact in the game of basketball. Dr. J, better known as Julius Erving, had a great impact over the game. But none of them were more impactful in the game of basketball than these three individuals that you see right here. when these three players was at their prime, they were unbeatable, unbreakable. Like, I cannot put Magic Johnson in the GOAT argument because I just can't. Because although he successfully won 5 championships, right? He's close to being the GOAT argument, but although he won 5 championships, but you still had people like Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, and even Larry Bird that had the best of them. Who had the best of Michael Jordan when he was in his prime? Who had the best of Bill Russell when he was at his prime? Who had the best of Kareem when he was in his prime? Remember, before LeBron James became the all-time scoring leader in the NBA, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar held that record for close to 30 years. How could you not consider him to be one of the GOATs? And he revolutionized the game so much with that sky hook, in which he perfected this move when he was in college playing for UCLA, being that at the time when he played in college players was not allowed to dunk. So therefore, Kareem, who at the time was named Lou Alcindor, was innovative enough to create one of the most graceful basketball moves that was hard to defend, the sky hook. Bill Russell, who still holds the records for the player with the most championship rings, who won 11 championships as a player and 2 more championships as a coach. Therefore, altogether, he has 13 championship rings. The only person who comes close to him is Phil Jackson. Other than that, no other player / coach in the history of the league have as much championship rings as he do. Michael Jordan. Nothing else to be said. He done got a whole generation of people wearing sneakers named after him. Everybody want to be like Mike. If you grew up in the 1990s, you know damn well I don't have to explain anything about this guy. And I don't even have to further explain why he's one of the only 3 players that can be considered in the GOAT argument. And for you young 20-something-year-olds who's wet behind the ears, who wasn't old enough to watch any of these 3 guys play in real life, please shut the fuck up. And please stop trying to put LeBron James in the GOAT argument. See, LeBron James is the greatest player of today's time. When I mean today's time, I'm speaking about from the late 2000s to the early 2020s. That era, you can say LeBron James is or was the greatest player of that time, period. But to try to include him in the greatest of all time argument in NBA history, nah. You could include him in the top 10 or the top best 15 players in the history of the NBA. I'll agree with you on it. But to consider him to be in the greatest player of all time argument, nah. Only 3 players in NBA history can be considered the greatest of all time. And that's these 3 individuals that you see right here. No one else. Until further notice. Shoot. And for those of you who try to always compare LeBron, that this may be another topic. Well, you know what? I'm going to. Okay, That's going to be another video. When it comes to this LeBron James and Michael Jordan comparisons that people have made for almost 20 years, which I find to be dumb as fuck. Because ain't no way you should or could compare these two players. That doesn't even come any close. But anyhow, yeah. These are the only two players that you can consider to be the greatest of all time in NBA history.